Everyone, Adam here, So Was Your Podcast. I just had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with Tananarive and Steve Barnes. They're husband and wife, writers, teacher, collaborators. They do have extensive careers in their own regard and they collaborate on some projects. They were super positive, super energetic, awesome people. They give so much great advice on if you want to be a writer, on motivation, on getting things done, on the importance of the stuff that we all love when how we can have something to say while they're still servicing the story. I'm fired up after the interview. I hope you're just as fired up after listening to it. Their latest project is the cereal box series Black Panther Sins of the King. We've covered some of the cereal box things in the past. This one, from what I got to hear so far, is amazing. I believe the whole thing drops tomorrow. They're doing it all in one big drop instead of episodic since we're all starving for content right now. Check out the interview. These guys are super motivating. You'll probably run through a brick wall and then write an entire novel after you're done listening to it. But stick around after the interview because we were sent some clips from the cereal box series, and I'll do a little setup, play the clip, so you get a really good sample of what it is. Hey everybody, I'm sitting down with Tananarive and Steve Barnes, and they are co-authors on the new cereal box series Black Panther. How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Fine, thank you.
How are you?
Doing good. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on. I think we have a lot to talk about. You guys are very prolific.
We do our best.
So before we get
every day.
Yeah. Before we get to Black Panther, I always like to ask creative people what got you into your creative path. I guess it would be primarily writing for the both of you.
Primarily writing. For me, it's just that I always dreamed and I always told stories to people. Although when I was very young, they called those lies, I think. I just decided I'd rather be rewarded for writing stories than punished for telling lies. So
there you go.
How it really started.
I mean, fiction is just one big long lie.
Anyway. That's right.
So we're professional liars, and we've learned how to do it in a safe way.
Oh.
But I mean, I wanted to be.
Hello, my name is Steve. I'm a liar. Writers Anonymous.
I always knew I wanted to write. I don't know when I first started reading, but I knew what a book was when I was 4 because I made one. I folded some typing paper in half and drew a book cover and drew liner notes on the back and said Tananarive Due is an author, you know? So I just had decided that young that that was how I identified and storytelling was what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. And it seems like it's been working out because I mean, I can't even really cover your projects because we'd be here, you know, until tomorrow for the both of you.
It's just kind of what we said, that if you do a little bit every day and you keep doing that, then, you know, in a few years, you look up and you've done a lot of stuff, and there's nothing special about it. It's just, you know, do you do the thing that you say is important to you every day? You know, it's like, I remember maybe the best piece of advice I ever heard was about parenting. This lady said that she was getting her kids off from work, off to school, and she was exhausted. And she was in a duplex, and she looked at the grandmother who shared the duplex next door, and she said, "You know, parenting is hard." And the older woman looked at her and said, "Parenting isn't hard; it's just daily." And that's the truth of anything you want to master. It's just daily. You know, you either make up your mind, "I'm going to do this," or you let your life get away from you. Really, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been publishing since 1995, and I remember like yesterday being a writing student, desperate to publish, not sure what the magic pixie dust was to finally write consistently professional level fiction so that I could publish on a regular basis. But now I'm transitioning into screenwriting, and Steve has been writing teleplays for a long time. So that to me is the exciting thing, just remembering the lessons from when I was just starting out as a prose writer and transfer those same lessons to screenwriting, and just know if you keep doing it, you keep plugging away, you keep writing draft after draft, you will finally figure it out.
And the biggest single piece of advice that I give to people is write at least one sentence every day. Just one sentence a day, you'll write a book in a year. Because by the time you've written one sentence, you're not going to stop there. You're going to keep going. But if you say it's just one sentence, there's always time to write one sentence. Always. You know, if that's what you're going to do, if that's who you say you are, there's always time to do that thing. And what'll come up is all of your excuses. all the ways that you stop yourself, all the ways you sabotage yourself, all of your fear, your doubt, your confusion. Then you can work on it. You flipped over that flat rock called, I've got all these excuses why I can't do this. And you're just looking directly at, I'm scared. I'm confused. I don't believe in myself. I'm still believing that artists starve. I don't want to be a bag lady. Whatever the stuff is that you think to yourself, or that even Baby Yoda on the says to himself, yes, even Baby Yoda. It's very important to feel that your ability to be you, to do you, to live your life on your terms is in your hands. It's very, very important to believe that. If people who don't believe that are just, they're the ones leading lives of quiet desperation.
So you'll be sorry you asked us this, because we actually talk about writing and teach writing quite a bit.
No, that's amazing.
There are 3 ways that writers throw themselves off. At first is the most common way. They're not writing. They call themselves writers, but they're not actually, even the sentence a day, they're not writing. Secondly, they don't finish what they write. This is a huge number of writers too. And then third, when they finish it, they don't share it. They don't submit it. When I finished the manuscript for my first novel, The Between, I submitted it in a contest, one contest. I didn't win. And I stuck it in a drawer. I thought, oh, well, I'm not ready. And I started writing my second novel, My Soul to Keep. And I was about 9 months into that process before I realized I was lying to myself. I was writing every day, but I wasn't finishing all the steps. And some part of me knew it. And that forced me to go to the drawer. And that book sold within 2 weeks.
See,
nice.
If your listeners are interested in this sort of conversation, then one of the things that I will say to them, I don't believe in talent. I believe in hard work and honesty over time. That if you get a good creative process and you keep doing it, I think anybody can write stories and get published. I think that the average person, if they put everything they had into it, can make a living being a writer. Could you be a best-selling writer, an award-winning writer, that kind of stuff? Who can say? But the basic thing, I think, is mostly, are you willing to really give it your best every day, day after day, and deal with the disappointment and the fear and the tears and the rejection?
So much disappointment.
It is.
Tears and rejection.
But the reward is that you get to spend your life doing something that you want to do. No matter how bad things get, how hard things get, I remember this is what the little boy inside me wanted to do. This life that I'm living right now, this is what I wanted. So any of the difficulties that are part of that were really just part of the package. It's like I wanted a life with those kinds of difficulties, as opposed to a nice steady job where I get a steady weekly paycheck, or but I'm not doing the thing that I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's always going to be trade-offs. I'm blessed, especially right now in the middle of a pandemic, that we're able to really work on things that we love and only associate with, even if it's only Zoom, people that we care about. I don't have to glad hand people I don't respect.
There's no boss,
right.
that we can't stand, that we have to avoid in the halls or anything like that.
Right.
And that comes from being able to determine what are the basic skills that you're going to need in order to do this and do this well, and define those clearly, and then committing to just learning the stuff that you need to learn in order to get there, and that you do that. It's in some ways, it's no different from any other occupation, any other avocation, any other thing that asks us to be, to be excellent, to master a set of skills. You either do it or you don't. You either do it every day, or you're not the thing that you say you are. You're not a writer when you stop writing. You might be an author, but that's a different thing.
Oh, burn.
I can be an author if somebody else wrote it.
Yeah.
I still my name on the book. I'm an author. That's my book. My sympathy is with the tribe of writers, the people whose dreams are just hammering at their hearts and exploding inside their heads. They've got to get it down, or they will die. They have 100% of my sympathy. They are my tribe. I understand them, and I want them to live happy lives. So anyway.
Yeah, that was all very awesome. And I know we have a lot of listeners who are in that avenue, and that's probably a good kick in the pants for a lot of people to dust off that manuscript and keep going.
Absolutely.
Keep it up. Don't
keep
give
it up. Believe in yourself and start with short story. If you're going to write books, start with short stories
or short scripts if you want to write screenplays.
Because trying to write a book before you've published short stories is like trying to run a marathon if you've never run around the block. It's self-defeating. You're going to hurt yourself. Whereas if you step up from short work, you can write a short story in a week, as opposed to a book that might take you a couple of years. The amount of your ego that you have invested in writing a book that took you 2 years can be shattering. If that gets rejected, that's like having your guts pulled out, but if somebody rejects a short story, by the time you get the rejection, you could be 2 short stories down the road. You don't even know the guy who wrote that short story. It's like, oh, that's right. Oh, well, let me put it back out there. I'm working on this one now.
Exactly.
It's the process. It's not hard. It's just daily.
Right. I really like that write a sentence a day, because it'll most likely be more, but at least you're writing every day.
Exactly. And any of your listeners who would like to try that, and you could join the life writing group that we do over on Facebook, where we very clearly, we coach people every few days. Another person on that list is talking about how they made their first sale, they made another sale. This is what we do. It's I can't promise you that you're going to get rich doing it, but I can promise you that you can publish stories and get better and be proud of what you've done and feel like you've voiced yourself.
And fulfill that dream that your younger self had or your older self has. And it's never too late. That's the great thing about writing. It's never too late.
So it's, we believe in the writing impulse. We believe in young writers. We love helping young writers. We give a lot of our time away for stuff like that. We've also got courses and things like that. But the fact is that you don't need courses. What you need is to read a lot, write a lot, send it off. Get feedback.
Yeah, feedback is important.
It's critical.
And not just people who love you. People
right in a bubble.
Who really will call you on your BS.
Yeah, the best compliment is a check that clears the bank from a stranger. It's like, oh yeah, I got 1/5 of a cent a word for my first, story, but it was still money. I got that check. It was like, I got like $7. I'm like, yeah, I'm stepping across a line now, and I'm a bad dude. It was a beginning.
Yeah.
It meant something. You don't ever denigrate how far you've come and the work you put into it, because the rewards aren't as big as some rewards you heard somebody else getting. Don't ever do that to yourself, or you'll never be in the position to do things like Black Panther. So it's like,
that was a good segue.
You're doing my job for me. This is great.
You get opportunities. People come to you with opportunities.
Yes.
Once, life meets no one halfway, as Rocky said. But if you go 51%, 55%, then people will start hearing about you. You do stochastic marketing where you're talking to people and getting out there, doing interviews like this with nice people like you, with Baby Yoda in the background. Hello, Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and we primarily collaborate on screenplays. We've collaborated on a couple of short stories. I think literally 2 short stories, but we collaborate as a team on screenplays. And
we've done 6 books together.
Oh God, what am I thinking? Yes, of course. We've done 6 books together. Yeah, hello.
She's turning. You write so many books, you forget.
No, she's turning into a scriptwriter. She, there is a mental shift when, to be able to do one kind of thing as opposed to another kind of thing. They're very similar in some ways and very different in others. So it was just kind of funny. She really lives in that space in the scripts now.
But
cool.
The funny thing about Cereal Box and what I love about it is that it's a hybrid model, so it's the written word, it's the enhanced audio, but the model of the creation of the story is more like a TV writer's room, and I had never been in a TV writer's room when I was invited to take part in this. So even though it was just a couple days, I was like a kid in a candy store, just hearing all these ideas zoom by my head, trying to jump in and say something, smart or cool. At one point I thought, well, let me be the one who brings the great food because I live locally. When their hearts do their stomachs. But in the end, and it's such a great team with Steve, and of course led by Ira Madison III and Jeffrey Thorne, and Mohale Mashigo is also one of the writers. So just so excited to have worked with such a creative group of other writers. That's something that a lot of writers don't get. No. Writing is a solitary occupation usually.
I've been blessed to work in several different shared universes, Marvel with Black Panther, DC with Batman. I wrote 2 Batman comics. I've worked in Star Wars. I've worked in Star Trek. And I'm a little bit of a chameleon in the sense that I really do like blending in with the things that other people have done. Collaboration works for me. Working by myself works for me. I just love writing. The creative part of me is just very alive and has never gone to sleep completely. And it's just what I do every day. And that's the thing about the sentence a day. It's keeping the pipe open. It's like stretching your body in the morning. It's making contact between, especially if you do it in the morning, between your dreaming self and your waking self. Everybody goes quietly insane every single night. I was just asked a question: is everybody creative? Yeah, everybody's creative. Not everyone's creative to the same degree. Not everyone has refined their creativity. Not everyone
embraces their creativity.
That's right, or embraces their creativity. But everybody goes nuts every single night. And if you just wrote down what was in your dreams, you'd eventually begin to come up with something you could structure. If you wanted to go that way, it's there. It's available to us. And if you don't do that, I think you're cheating yourself. Everybody who has the urge to write stories should write stories, and get at least one published. It's a thrill. It's fun.
Definitely. That sounds awesome. I mean, you guys are super motivating.
We believe in you. And see, that's the truth. I believe in your creative capacity.
No, great. Just
yeah.
Well, in terms of the Black Panther Sins of the King project, I was just really excited to learn this morning that they're all going to drop as a binge.
Yeah.
Which for me personally is very exciting because I love hearing William Jackson Harper's narration. I'm an audio junkie anyway, but when it's a project that we were involved in and the sound effects, and he does such an amazing job with all these accents. So as soon as I saw that email about them all dropping, I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to listen to our first chapter.
No, this was a labor of love. I mean, I read the very first appearance of Black Panther, back in 1968. And the early comic books, and then the first movie was a miracle. It was astounding that they'd pulled that off and pulled it off at the level that they did. It was unprecedented. I was thrilled.
And shows such a hunger for that character.
That's right.
And for the idea of Wakanda. We know Wakanda isn't real, but I know a lot of people in social media were joking, especially over the past 4 years, that we wanted to move to Wakanda. It's sort of an idea in our heads.
Yeah.
And it's a strange African and African American blend, because the whole dreaming of Wakanda is very much African American, even though the original creators were not.
Yeah, it's a yearning for what was taken away,
right,
in the diaspora.
Right.
And Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did something miraculous there. Here you have 2 American Jews come out of World War II. They were both in the military, and Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, I guess, created Captain America for that. And they were creating these heroes that stood up against injustice. Okay. And at some point, Stan and Jack kind of turned to each other and said, how come there aren't any Black heroes? And they simply, a lot of people would never have noticed that. A lot of people would have said that and would have slipped by. These guys said that and then did something.
It made him badass too.
That's right. Yeah. He took on the entire Fantastic Four.
And then when Reginald Hudlin did his comic version, he had T'Challa beat up Captain America in literally the first few pages. So this idea of that strength and that agency and a hidden nation that has so much wealth and resources, and T'Challa's leadership and his quandaries. I love that T'Challa is so conflicted so much. That makes him a very relatable character.
Yeah, and even his antagonist, Killmonger. There are people who really seriously identified with Killmonger
in the film,
in the film, and in the comic books too, I would imagine. But the idea of why aren't we helping our people? Why aren't we doing this? See, these are kinds of questions that comic books rarely deal with, and comic book movies even more rarely deal with. But if you talk about the concept of heroism, you have to ultimately ask, well, who is the hero and what is the world that the hero lives in? what is it to do something heroic? What is it to stand up? The film itself was an act of heroism, and what we're doing is not directly connected to the film. It's connected to the comic books, but we all know that it has the kind of interest it has because of the cultural visibility of T'Challa.
Let's face it, a lot of our readers and listeners will be like me. I never read the original run of the Black Panther, and I only started reading the comics when I started teaching Afrofuturism at UCLA. It wasn't as a comic reader. It was really through the cinematic universe that I got to know T'Challa and Shuri and Okoye. So that even though we are writing in the comic universe, there's a lot that will be familiar to people who are not as well versed with the comics, but they loved the movie, and that makes it a lot of fun.
It has nothing to do with the movie. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
It doesn't. But
the lawyers tell us we have to say that.
In some ways, though, I mean, what's interesting about it is that we find ourselves kind of fixated on this moment, which is about the time the film is ending, which is this question of T'Challa and Wakanda being more open to the rest of the world, right? We're walking out into a world stage. So we get to sort of play with this idea of, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And what are the pitfalls of when you become more of a world player and you enter that world stage and make yourself more vulnerable? Even T'Challa and even Wakanda have a lot on their hands in this story.
And you have to do it in the context of an exciting story. And you can have all the intents and politics, philosophy, anything else. But what people really want to know is, are there really tough people hitting each other in the face?
Right.
Yes, there are.
People are into Wakandan technology, but Black Panther's got to punch somebody.
Got to punch somebody. Ultimately, you know.
And are women going to kick butt too? Absolutely.
Absolutely. Are there badass women? Yes, there are. So, you know, it's wanting to create something that we would want to have read.
Yeah.
You know, and if you do that, and you do that honestly, then you will find an audience.
And it also examines sort of bigger pieces of what loss is. And when we lose people, the impact of losing people and loss really has a lot to do with this story, not to give it away. So that's something that I like to engage with. You know, as someone who has suffered loss and who is always sort of obsessed with future losses, any tools I can find for navigating those waters is always helpful. And I guess the answer is lots of kicking butt and punching and that'll get you through.
Well, you know, in comic books, you know, you don't have room for a lot of subtlety in dialogue, subtlety in facial expressions and body movement, so forth. What you do have are large, blunt actions. You know, large technicolor actions. So you create metaphors for internal states and the things we really care about, and political movements, so forth. And you clash these things against each other. If you take a look at Captain America: Civil War, on the surface, it's these superheroes hitting each other, but underneath it, it's a discussion about the responsibilities of power and society. You know, and what is true, and who am I? And I think that all artists try to do that. Even if they're not thinking about it consciously, they're always presenting images of, this is what I think human beings are. This is what I think the world is. We try to do that, you know, on working with other people within an established universe with these, you know, broad characters
that we know they've already been set. We can't like make them like completely different than they're supposed to be, but within that structure there's a lot of room to play and create new stories. And I think it's especially important with Black Panther, I mean, just on a more serious note, because everyone is in so much mourning about the death of Chadwick Boseman and questions about what's next for the cinematic franchise. So just at this time, this great hunger opened up for this character of Black Panther. There's this looming absence, right? And no one can replace Chadwick Boseman, obviously, but T'Challa lives on. T'Challa lives on in Sins of the King, and I think William Jackson Harper's narration really does a nice homage to sort of that voice that we hear when we think of Black Panther now.
For sure. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask how that news influenced. I mean, I'm sure your well within the writing process, if not almost done with the writing
Yeah,
process.
we were finished by that.
Yeah.
We were finished, but it was like a steak because we had just been literally putting words into his mouth, and that was the voice I heard.
And my attitude is that they should do a title card at the beginning. This film dedicated to Chadwick Boseman, our once and always king, or something like that, and then just get on with the story. You recast. It's like, that's just, I'm sorry, that death happens, but you don't kill a character in a movie unless that's what you want to do. If you want to kill him, then have the courage to say, well, we're going to use this as an excuse.
Well, and we just met him. We just got him.
Yeah, I think the character's here to stay, cinematic and comic wise, and now
Fingers
you guys
crossed.
are bringing him into more novelization / audiobook, I guess. It's more of a dramatization, so it's hard to say exactly, but
for Cereal Box?
Yeah, Cereal Box is doing this unique thing where it's kind of bringing back like the old kind of radio dramatizations, but
we love
it cool. We
love. I love radio drama. I just adore them.
It's and for people who prefer to read the written word, you can have that too. But I am an audio junkie. I listen to audio books and audio dramas all the time, and this is a great sort of blending of the two. I mean, it literally is, he's reading the words on the page, but it feels more like an audio drama because of the sound effects. You should have seen my face the first time I heard like the explosions. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just fun. I wish I could get these kinds of publications for everything I write.
We're just about out of time now.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
we have a 1:30, so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. You guys are fantastic. I could talk to you all day, but you did
another time.
Sure, absolutely. Whenever you have a new project, let's do it.
Okay.
You did mention it's all dropping at once. Do you want to tell everybody when that is?
I believe the email said it's dropping Thursday, February 4th, which would be tomorrow.
Oh, so I better get this up right away.
Yeah, the installments.
Please do.
Yeah, the installments were coming out weekly, but then Cereal Box decided, in the spirit of everyone looking for things to binge, me included, because I like to hit play next just as much as anybody else. So yeah, this week they'll all be dropping, and people can just go right straight through the story.
Okay.
And your collective episode is the second one, I believe.
We have, I think it's number 3 and number 8.
Oh,
but don't quote me on that.
Okay, but you guys are in there, so keep an eye
on it. One of the early chapters, I'm pretty sure it's 3, and then one of the later chapters, which is also fun as a writer to like sort of pick up a baton when other writers have been doing that. You have to sort of absorb everything they've done and create your own chapter. It's different, but it was fun.
That's very cool.
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys very much. That was motivational. It was a writing clinic. It was inspirational. So that was fantastic. You guys are great. I really appreciate it.
You have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Huge thanks again to Tananarive and Steve Barnes. These two are amazing. I know I'm going to be looking into their courses, their lectures. They have webinars. They got to do some stuff with Jordan Peele. They got to write for Twilight Zone, tons of other genre projects. They have a series on Shudder. They're everywhere. They got their hands in everything, and that's incredible. I'm still fired up about it. Sorry if I'm talking too fast, but they were just really, really motivational. But we do have some clips. I hope you stick around to check them out. This first clip is from the second episode. It is T'Challa chasing after a mysterious assassin when he runs into a familiar face. Just to give you some context, I don't want to give you any spoilers. Enjoy the clip.
The shooter was already out of sight, but T'Challa still had his scent. In mid-run, T'Challa coiled and sprang, sailing over the first rooftop and onto the next, landing right beside the woman. Her gliding harness folded down between her shoulder blades as she scrambled across the roof. I take you to be an agent of the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, he said, falling into step with her. Stand down, Your Majesty, she said between breaths. She wasn't even winded, still running at full speed. This woman was perhaps near the level of the Dora Milaje. Impressive for an outsider. Let law enforcement, but he was gone, bursting out ahead of her in long, arcing leaps. He may have heard the word showboat as she dwindled behind him. Amusing, as if justice could be bound by something as spindly as a local ordinance. Duty, knowledge, honor, loyalty, justice, he heard his father whisper from his memory. These are the claws of the Panther clan. Justice would be at the tips of his claws as soon as the runner was brought to ground. T'Challa had got a good look at the man during the ceremony, but the details remained oddly hard to lock down. If T'Challa hadn't seen his exit from the ballroom, hadn't watched the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent dash to follow, he was sure the man would have faded from his mind like smoke in a wind. Which should not be possible, he thought, as he landed to crouch on the lip of another rooftop. The embassy was far behind him now, and from his high perch he scanned the area, looking for any hint of something out of place. Sirens screamed far below, emergency vehicles moving past his position, on their way to the embassy, most likely. Automobiles parted to let them pass, and the ever-flowing crowd had mostly stopped, watching the commotion. All of them were statues, except that one tiny figure, darting among the onlookers, threading its way up the boulevard far too quickly. T'Challa pounced. He hit the face of the nearest building, his habit's vibranium lacing eating the sound, his vibranium claws raking deep scars in the stone. Riding his momentum, he slid around the corner to where the stone became glass. Then, he was running along the sheer face perpendicular to the pavement, still so far below. He had already halved the distance between himself and the shooter. He vaulted off the wall, twisting his body in the air to hit the ground in a skid that became a dead run through the crush of New Yorkers. T'Challa surged forward, desperate to put eyes on the shooter again. The faintest tendrils of that phantom scent wafted into his nostrils, leading him into an alley. There, at the far end, stood the attempted assassin. "It will be better if you surrender," said T'Challa. The shooter didn't move. His hawkish mahogany features betrayed no thought, no intention. T'Challa thought he might be petrified, cornered as he was, but the assassin's eyes were reminiscent of a doll. Clear, but seeing nothing. There was no emotion behind them, no fear, no anger or hatred, just nothing. Silent as a statue, the man lunged for him. The attack was so fast, T'Challa only barely managed to dodge clear. He raked his claws down the man's back in passing, shredding his jacket to confetti along with the flesh beneath. The man spun, smashing his heel into T'Challa's sternum. The impact sent a sudden, jarring jolt of electricity through him. Some technology meant to disrupt his habit's functions? The man was fast, certainly stronger than human, but his fighting style was little more than that of a street brawler. It was, perhaps, the result of the strange buzzing in his head, the fissures of static running through him each time the assassin's hands made contact. Try as he might, T'Challa could not clear the static from his brain, which was why it came as a complete surprise to him when he felt the man's hands lock tight on his throat and squeeze. "Focus, T'Challa." He brought his arms up between the assassins and pushed out, but couldn't break his grip. The man continued to tighten his hold. The buzzing in his mind and body cut his thoughts. He could feel himself blacking out. "Hey!" A woman's voice, angry, commanding, cut into his fugue. The assassin jolted as if struck by something, and the grip on T'Challa's throat vanished. Stumbling back into a crouch, T'Challa forced his mind to clear. He looked up to find the assassin in close combat with the S.H.I.E.L.D. woman who seemed, impossibly, to be holding her own. She danced around each of the man's attacks, only to come right back at him with blow after staggering blow. Though she seemed to favor her right arm, each of her strikes forced the man back. "Yo, Cat King," she said. "This guy's not gonna arrest himself."
Very cool stuff. The narrator is William Jackson Harper. I was first introduced to this actor in A Good Place on NBC, which was a phenomenal show, and then he was also in Midsummer. I'm sure he's done more, but those are things I'm familiar with. He is killing it in this as narrator and nailing that Wakanda accent that, while Black Panther has been around for decades, that is the sound we all hear thanks to the late, great Chadwick Boseman. I do have another clip for you, too. This is from the 4th episode. It's a little bit of exposition on the history between Wakanda and the former apartheid nation of Rudyarda. I hope I said that right. It's with T'Challa and T'Chaka discussing the choices made in the past that led to today's conflict. And then they're interrupted by someone who seems intent on harming them. I think this is really, really cool because we just found out that Coogler got a 5-year deal with Disney Plus and will be developing a Wakanda, not necessarily Black Panther, but a Wakanda series. So to get more information on this utopian nation that we're all so into ever since Black Panther made his debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Very cool.
Every Wakandan schoolchild knew of Rudyarda's ruthlessness. At a young age, T'Challa himself had learned the shocking tale. How the Rudyardans had somehow slipped past the defenses. Warrior after warrior had slipped into the country, fighting like madmen with no worry for their lives, or the lives of children. It had happened during his father's rule, and it was almost fitting that T'Chaka should return at the start of a new, different kind of crisis with Rudyarda. Almost as if the crisis itself had summoned him. Now it was T'Chaka who listened in studious silence, as T'Challa told the disastrous tale of the damage done to Rudyarda and the dead shooter in New York City. By the time the story was finished, their elevator had brought them back to T'Challa's private entrance to the vibranium mine. The two emerged into softer, natural sunshine. The jungle at this end was snaked by antelope trails through the juniper trees, all in view of the breathtaking rock art that lined the mountainside. From this direction, he might be able to see the Rudyardan border, if not for the light fog misting the mountain. He felt a sting as he remembered Marimba's glowing face as she spoke of healing their nations. How could old wounds be healed when new ones were mounting? "As you can see," T'Challa said, "I have made quite the mess of diplomacy." "So it seems in today's light," T'Chaka said. "But clearly, you are not the only one to blame. And I would tell you a story, T'Challa. Perhaps you have heard one version, but hear me to the end. We have an unhappy history with Rudyarda, and I lay much of that history upon my own feet, just as you do today." "Your feet?" T'Challa said. He had a distant memory of schoolmates telling him to stick close to the roads or the Rudyardans might snatch him. "They tried to overwhelm us." "Oh yes, the old story. The invaders came and tried to take our land, but we beat them back and kept Wakanda's borders safe." "Now do you want to hear the truth?" T'Challa felt a flash of anger. How could a king not know the truth about his own country? "Always, Baba," T'Challa said, a bit sharply. "They were never invaders," T'Chaka said, his voice grave. "They brought no weapons. Many of them had no proper clothes or shoes. And they came so quickly, like the tide of a mighty ocean. They were not trying to invade us. They were trying to flee." "Flee?" Anger twisted to shock and disillusionment. "What do you mean?" "You know Rudyarda's history," T'Chaka said. "How it has mistreated its people." Rudyarda's borders had been drawn by Boers fleeing South Africa, and many of South Africa's racist habits had dogged the new nation until the people's uprisings. The government cracked down harshly on protesters who wanted liberation from tyranny. I did not know all of the stories then because its propaganda hid the truth from the world. But entire villages were razed. In the southern provinces, they saw no hope except Wakanda, T'Challa said, breathing his nation's name in a whisper. Despite being hidden, despite the secret travel passages, somehow they knew how to come to our doorstep. They begged us to let them in, but we did not. And far too many died. How was he only now hearing this? Rudyarda was not the only nation deft with its propaganda. But our schools? T'Chaka sighed. For me, the most difficult part of rule is appeasement, he said. I was a new king and unsure. Knowing that I was responsible for so many dead kept me awake at night. And I argued before the council that we should formulate a policy, a procedure to help our neighbors in need. But the council had grown only more hardened. You see, the elder members said, they would have overrun us, and who will be next? So I bowed to the council's wishes. The misinformation was a natural outgrowth. I did not create the lies, but I did not stop them. This made T'Challa's recent horrors with the Avengers and Rudyarda feel all the worse. Rudyarda was struggling to rebuild after so much strife, and Wakanda still was not a true ally. His father's treasured words rang in his memory. Duty, knowledge, honor, loyalty, justice. These are the claws of the Panther clan. But despite his disappointment, T'Challa could not forget who it was he spoke to. You were just a young man respecting the word of those who had lived longer and seen more, he said. The words stung his throat, but he felt empathy, too. He knew the challenges of being king. But my rule became the bulwark of the isolationist cause. Even when I could hear children's screams in my sleep, sometimes I still hear them. I will never forget it. Dead or alive. The phrase chilled him. Dead or alive. T'Challa knew they could no longer ignore what must be confronted. We buried you, he said. It was the largest funeral in living memory. I saw you die. Grief tried to rise with the memory. But how could he grieve when his father stood beside him? How are you here? I do not know, T'Chaka said. And that frightens me. Me as well, T'Challa confessed. Okoye is beside herself, as if you are a sworn foe. And is he not a foe? A man's voice roared all around them, echoing against the mountain. M'Baku. They had been so careful to hide T'Chaka's return, but the secret was out. Was there a spy on the council who had reported it to M'Baku right away? Was council business so readily shared outside the halls? T'Challa's panther habit hummed into place, shielding him. By instinct, he stood before his father to protect him. His habit's sensor revealed 12 hostile figures glowing only 20 yards from them, still hidden in the trees. How had they gotten so close? And he had left Okoye behind. He did not know what would happen if T'Chaka sustained mortal injuries now, but he had no desire to learn. If only he hadn't been so preoccupied. I heard them coming, T'Chaka whispered through his beads. But there was nothing to be done. We shall have an adventure today, it seems. If only you had a panther habit, T'Challa whispered back. T'Chaka clucked. I don't need it, youngster. I have enough strength from the herb. Show yourselves! T'Challa roared to the trees as if he were backed by an army. Brush rustled as M'Baku and his men and women warriors waded out into the open, all 12 armed and primed for battle with axes and deadly singizis. This was a war party, not a diplomatic mission. Warriors of the Jabari tribe, T'Challa called out, disrespecting M'Baku by looking away from him. As your king, I, T'Challa, proclaim that you return to your lands. Do not let M'Baku lead you to ruin. You risk banishment, and worse. For any who lays a hand upon us, turn away now, and I will remember this as a greeting party. None of the resolve melted from the faces of the Jabari. T'Challa, M'Baku said gently, even as his body was flexed for battle. It brings us no pleasure to be here, and none of us wishes to lay a hand upon you, our king. To T'Challa's surprise, M'Baku's men snapped their arms crossed in a Wakanda salute in unison, a display of sober respect. Even the Dora Milaje could not have done better. Then what is this, M'Baku? T'Challa said. He was broadcasting his voice to Okoye, as she chirped in his ear right away. We are 3 minutes away, my king. Get him talking. M'Baku likes to hear his own voice. M'Baku pointed toward T'Chaka, who stood behind T'Challa's shoulder. He does not belong among us. It is still customary to refer to a past king by his honorific M'Baku. M'Baku spat. The king is buried. As you said, the funeral was a spectacle. This aberration that walks beside you is not worthy of my respect. If you are unable to dispatch him because your heart cannot bear it, that duty falls to the Jabari. Of course, M'Baku was heavily superstitious, and many Jabari believed in demonic possession. The Jabari revered the moment of death as sacred, especially for a warrior. If Okoye were here, she might have felt her loyalties tested by M'Baku's stance, although for strategic rather than mystical reasons. "You have chosen a doomed course," T'Challa said. "Surely you do not believe this will end with my father in your custody." "No one said anything about custody," M'Baku said. The fire returned to M'Baku's eyes when he spoke next. "And you will be free to bury him again."
Well, thanks for sticking around for those clips. Thanks for listening to the interview. They did make clear in the interview that this is the comic character Black Panther, not necessarily the MCU, but as far as I'm concerned, everything's the same lore. We're all just having a good time hearing good stories. Please remember to subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more cool stuff like this coming up. You're not going to want to miss out. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, videos, and more. We love hearing feedback. Drop us a note in the comments. Leave us something on social media. Thanks again.